All right, guys, we're back. In this video, we're going to pick up where we left off from the last video about the Neolithic Revolution, which, as I said, is the singular most important thing to have ever happened in our human history. Um, Quick recap, okay? Neolithic Revolution is the time period when humans went from hunter-gatherers to agriculturalists, right? We started farming. We believe that it was women who started that by their knowledge of seeds and plants, and just coming across more food once they came back to a regular campsite. We also know that there's a connection between food supply and population. That as the food supply goes up, that population also goes up. So we saw a population boom during this time. In other words, more food equals more people. Um, Today, in this video, we're going to talk about what other things that farming allows, because there's three main things that farming allows. First up, as you can see, we're talking about animals and the domestication of animals, okay? Um, until we started farming, humans didn't domesticate animals. Maybe dogs, right, might have been the first to help with hunts and stuff, but for the most part, we didn't have any animals to, like do extra work for us, or animals that we used for meat or milk or fur or wool or anything like that. It wasn't until we had enough food lying around that we not only could feed ourselves, but we could also essentially waste some of that food on animals like goats, cows, pigs, that we could then use those sheep, that we could then use those animals and, get things from them, whether it's milk or meat, whether it's leather or wool. Um, we were able to domesticate animals. Domesticate basically just means to bring under human control. So you actually could make an argument, and it's actually what this is called. Agriculture, farming is really the domestication of plants. So we have the domestication of plants first, domestication of animals on a large scale second. Again, dogs were the first to be domesticated, but on a large scale, right, is really when you start to see this. Um, Now, I also should bring up the fact, as I'm reminded, to talk about how agriculture developed independently, right? This was something that human groups made decisions to move to, um, without connections with others. So it wasn't like, farming spread around the world, but it's not like it was brought by a messenger, right? People didn't go around the world teaching others how to farm. It just kind of happened naturally. But it's also important to remember that not all human groups made this switch. Some human groups went to herding animals, herding like a shepherd, herds, and they were nomadic. This is actually still pretty popular in both sub-Saharan and North Africa, um, as well as in Asia. There's also still nomadic groups that are primarily hunter-gatherers in South America and Asia as well, that are pretty much living the same lifestyles that our ancestors did, 50,000 years ago. Um, Herding is just as viable as agriculture, right? There's still all the benefits of with the animals, and they, a steady source of food supply and stuff. It has the same benefits. It's just, instead of domesticating plants, they've domesticated animals. But farming in and of itself allows for another thing to develop, and that is settling and this idea of property. With farming, humans no longer need to be mobile, right? They can stay in one spot. Instead of going to where the food is, we can just create food where we need it. We saw that in the previous video where humans started clearing land for agriculture. Well, if I'm going to go through all the work of clearing the land and working the soil and growing the food, well, I don't really want to leave, right? I kind of want to stay there and enjoy the fruits of my labor, pun intended. Um, there's a lot of uh, talk and history about research that talks about that this is also where the idea of property comes about, right? That I'm putting my work into this land must be mine. But a lot of those people tend to forget that in the beginning, these first villages, and actually really up until maybe 1,000 years ago, um, farmland was pretty much held in common. It was a communal land that was used for the benefit of the whole civilization. Um, so initially in these first villages, right, that villages like Jericho and Catalhuyuk, um, they had the farmland pretty much in the center, and these people would build their houses all around the farmland. That farmland then became kind of like a common place. Everybody worked on the farm, and the farm, uh, the food that was produced on those farms would then be divided, more or less evenly among the people. All the harvests would go into these storehouses or warehouses, and then they would be distributed out as needed. Um, that was pretty much how this worked at the very beginning of farming, and really up until the medieval periods. Farming was really just an offshoot of the cities, right, of the civilizations that it was feeding. Um, I like to think that you go back 50, 60 years, most of the land around Holy Ghost was just farmland. Um, growing food to feed, the city of Philadelphia. That was pretty much the model that most cities and farms had, really from the beginning of farming, 12,000 years ago. Um, but I want you to answer this next question. I want you to think about it from ways that we've been talking about the importance of food supply and population and stuff. Why would more available food allow for the development of other occupations? Because this is the third thing. So the first thing that agriculture allows is, outside of the control of the food supply, is the domestication of animals. The second thing is it allows us to stop being nomadic and allows us to settle down and potentially develop ideas around property. And then the third is it allows for uh, the creation of other jobs outside of food gathering or harvesting, right? Which is the first time in human history that someone's job was not related to food. So I want you to think about the relationship between farming and the creation of other jobs. And there's going to be a discussion board question that you're going to need to answer. So look for that on Schoology. And until next time, guys, I will see you later. And I will see you goats later. It's good having you back on the screen.